Genevieve Craigie's first love, Ina Jimmy, is back. Just as I was getting ready for my divorce from Genevieve Craigie, he accidentally swapped bodies with his son. In desperation, Genevieve Craigie went to kindergarten instead of his son, who played the role of the cold-faced president whom everyone feared. On the first day of the swap of identities, the father and son reported the situation. The son's face was full of pride. Today, there was a strange aunt who wanted to hug my father, and I pushed her away at that time, and said that I have a wife, and my mother is amazing. Genevieve Craigie was expressionless. It's too noisy to scold a child for crying, and the other parent wants to give an explanation, and you may need to make a trip. Me. Later, Ina Jimmy coaxed Genevieve Craigie in a seductive tone. Salome Craigie, will I be your mother in the future? Genevieve Craigie grimaced. You die. They love each other very much. I never expected that. Husband Genevieve Craigie and son Salome Craigie swapped bodies. It was the day after Ina Jimmy returned home. Before it happened, I was about to hand over the signed divorce agreement to Genevieve Craigie. After all, one is the first love, and the other is the woman who had to marry because of marriage. As a well-read romance diva, I understand too well the part where her first love returns to China, to get back everything that belongs to her. Who knew that before they could get back together, this would happen? Surprisingly, the father and son's reactions were calmer than the other. The son was on Genevieve Craigie's face, his eyes bright. Mom, now that I'm a dad, don't I have to go to school? Me, theoretically, yes. I couldn't help but stare at his face a few more times. Genevieve Craigie is the kind of person who is very upright and sharp, with cold eyebrows and eyes, a high nose and thin lips, and a cold face on weekdays, which only makes people feel unapproachable without anger and self-authority. And it is the first time I have seen such a rich expression on his face. Should I say it or not? It's pretty cute. As for Genevieve Craigie himself, he looked up with a childish little face at that time and said solemnly, Salome Craigie, listen to Daddy. Let's play a game. From today until we change back to the body, you pretend to be your father to work in the company, and your father goes to kindergarten instead of you. And our game task is to make the people around us not find out our true identity, and whoever is discovered first will lose. Without the slightest surprise, the smart son really responded with anticipation. I watched in silence as the father and son reached an agreement, and Genevieve Craigie manipulated his small body of 1 meter and ordered the tall man of 1 meter 9 in an old-fashioned tone. Okay, it's not early. You go back to the room to sleep first. Dad and Mom still have something to talk about. With strength, it interprets what is called a 1 meter height and a 2 meter aura. After my son left, I looked down and Genevieve Craigie stared at each other. To be honest, the picture was a little weird at one point. I hesitated. Is it okay to have a little kid who just turned 4 years old pretend to be you? Genevieve Craigie's eyebrows frowned slightly, and finally showed a little helplessness. Don't forget, he has a strong ability to imitate, and now in this situation, he can only try. But it's not easy to hide from others, and it's taking your hard work to cooperate during this time. What worries me the most is that this body change happened without warning, and I don't know when it will take to change back, or rather, whether there will be a chance to change back in the end. I also find it tricky, if you and Salome Craigie haven't been able to switch back. Genevieve Craigie said calmly, then you will support me. Me, hey. Genevieve Craigie said leisurely, what, do you still want to give up? The voice was soft, but the tone was unmistakable. Moira Esther, if you really get to that point, you have to support me for the rest of your life. Me, then I'm going to ask Ina Jimmy. Also, I saw the divorce agreement. Genevieve Craigie paused, let out a long sigh, and her immature little face revealed an adult exhaustion. If you can, I'd suggest you develop other hobbies in your daily life. Read less novels. Early the next morning, the father and son officially began to exchange lives. Genevieve Craigie goes to kindergarten, and Salome Craigie children go to work. Before parting, the two handed over with a serious face. Genevieve Craigie, leave it to Lillian Nicholas if you have a problem. And remember, you can't make mistakes if you don't talk much. Son, Elmo with long yellow hair, Olive with short black hair, and Principal with little hair and a lot of words. Dad, don't forget, me. To be honest, I still find it a little hard to believe. Send my son to work and pick up my husband from kindergarten. It's so outrageous that people will just think I'm funny when I say it. Genevieve Craigie then looked at me. I have already explained the company to Lillian Nicholas in advance. Salome Craigie is just going to go through the motions. And as for the kindergarten, you don't have to worry. I nodded and relieved myself. It's not early. It's time to go to kindergarten. Genevieve Craigie. Kids, listen to the teacher obediently. Genevieve Craigie. As I watched Genevieve Craigie get into the car for the kindergarten, I smiled like a motherly and a good wife. 20 minutes later, Lillian Nicholas and I were docked. I looked around and lowered my voice. You know everything. Lillian Nicholas was speechless. Genevieve Craigie told me everything. Come to think of it, as Genevieve Craigie's poison only. No, as a confidant, Genevieve Craigie would choose to tell him that it was expected. Lillian Nicholas snorted. You can go back if it's nothing. Little Genevieve Craigie, I'll take care of it. I didn't take it to heart either. After all, Genevieve Craigie has been treating me that way since I got married. Okay, I'll come with him later to pick up his dad from school. The corners of Lillian Nicholas' mouth twitched. Okay. Just then, a message popped up on the phone. Elma, Salome Craigie's mom. I'd like to ask if anything happened to Salome Craigie lately. And I think he's weird today. I thought for a moment and said, this is the Genevieve Craigie version. Maybe I'm not familiar with the new body, and need to get used to it. Estimating that the time was almost up, I came to the office to take my son to the kindergarten to pick up Genevieve Craigie and take him home. Thereupon, in front of everyone's eyes, the cold Genevieve Craigie, who was not smiling in their eyes, swooped towards me with cheerful steps. Me and the staff there, in desperation, I covered his mouth and lowered my voice. What are you doing? Remember who you are now. The son urgently withdrew a mother, and his expression immediately became calm. Moira Esther, why are you here? Me, good boy. It's kind of a good imitation. After staying away from everyone's gaze, the son immediately took off his disguise and couldn't wait to share. Today, there is a strange aunt who wants to hug me. No, I should say that I want to hug my father. I pushed her away at the time, and said that I have a wife. Mom, I'm amazing. Lillian Nicholas silently explained. It's Ina Jimmy. She came to Genevieve Craigie, but I called someone behind me to kick her out. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. It's got to be you, Lillian Nicholas, who was so rude to her first love. She saw my thoughts, and he said awkwardly, although I don't like you very much, I don't necessarily like her. That woman hates her even more than you. I was silent. Is worthy of being a poisonous agent? And he hates every woman around Genevieve Craigie equally. I hesitated. Well, wait to pick up Genevieve Craigie from school. Do you want to come along? Lillian Nicholas didn't even think about it and said, go. Half an hour later, there are 3 more probes at the entrance of the kindergarten. Lillian Nicholas looked anxious. Why don't you come out yet? Genevieve Craigie won't have any accidents. As soon as the words fell, a familiar small figure appeared in sight. It was Genevieve Craigie, who was on top of his son's body. He was sandwiched between a group of children, with a cold little face, visible to the naked eye. The complexion is extremely smelly. Lillian Nicholas rushed straight at the head of the lunge. What's going on? Why aren't you happy? Elma looked at him, then at me. She hadn't seen Genevieve Craigie before, and when she looked at Lillian Nicholas with a concerned look, she tentatively asked, this must be Salome Craigie's father, right? Genevieve Craigie's face stinked even more. I quickly pushed my son and lowered my voice. Tell her you are. The son stepped forward to meet Elma's gaze, and said weakly, I'm not a son, I'm a father. Me. In the end, he is still a little child. No matter how much he pretends to be, like he will be exposed in front of the teacher. Lillian Nicholas finally reacted. Teacher, you misunderstood. I'm a friend of his father. Elma's gaze wandered between the few of us, and the emotions in her eyes were abundant. I understand. After all, my father didn't do much just now, but when my uncle subconsciously rushed over first. In this situation, you can quote a line that is widely circulated on the internet. The uncle next door is your real father. Genevieve Craigie was the first to speak out to break the eerie atmosphere. Elma. He pulled out a standard smile and said politely, it's not early. I'm going home with my parents. See you tomorrow. I looked at his emotionless smile like a human machine. I understand that you want to imitate your son's usual innocent appearance, but the advice here is that you don't laugh yet. Elma was visibly stunned for a few seconds. Hey, okay, bye-bye. Before leaving, I vaguely heard her muttering, "What a strange family." In the car, Lillian Nicholas reports to Genevieve Craigie, "I've handed over the project to Lucas and Sophia as you instructed, and I've brought all the documents you need to sign." Genevieve Craigie nodded, then looked at his son. "Are you still used to it in the company?" The son thought about it seriously, and replied honestly, "Dad, I've been in the office today and haven't been anywhere. I don't think this game is very fun. How long will we have to do this?" The original intention was to avoid too much intersection with other people and be discovered, but now that I think about it, 4 years old is the age of fun, and it is a little too cruel for my son. Genevieve Craigie's eyes flashed with guilt, and he lowered his eyes for a moment. "Salome Craigie, since you promised Dad to play this game, don't give up halfway." He sighed softly, his tone soft. "But since you're bored, from tomorrow onwards, you can go wherever you want in the company. Of course, when you meet other uncles and aunts, you have to pretend to be your father's usual appearance." The son's eyes lit up. "I know. Dad usually doesn't like to laugh fiercely, just like this." Genevieve Craigie looked at his son, who had turned into a dead fish face in a second, in silence. "Well, it's like this." Lillian Nicholas hurried, but Genevieve Craigie interrupted him. "It's okay. You try to make sure he's within your line of sight." Lillian Nicholas could only respond, "By the way, Genevieve Craigie, Ina Jimmy came to the office today, and said she had something to tell you, and I didn't stop her from letting her into the office." Genevieve Craigie frowned. Lillian Nicholas then added, "But she didn't find out, so I kicked her out as fast as I could." "Intentionally or not?" Genevieve Craigie glanced at me. "Yes, well done." Received a call from Elma. "I forgot to mention in the afternoon that Salome Craigie had a little dispute with another child in the class today, and the other parent is very angry and may need you to come tomorrow." I glanced at Genevieve Craigie, who was expressionless. "He told me when he got home." "No problem." After hanging up the phone, looking at Genevieve Craigie who was full of worries, I smiled and reassured, "Okay Genevieve Craigie, it's not a big deal. You don't have to take it to heart." In fact, it is understandable that Genevieve Craigie, who is famous in the shopping mall, has never only reprimanded others, but now he has been reduced to the point of being invited to the parents. Genevieve Craigie shook her head. "It's not because of the parents. I don't regret saying those things to that child. In fact, today it's not just because he is arguing, but because he told me Salome Craigie doesn't have a father, and even if he does, he doesn't love him, because I'm not there at every parent-teacher meeting and parent-child event." He sighed imperceptibly, with mixed emotions in his eyes. "I just think, I never seemed to be a good father. It turned out to be because of this. My son never told me, and I didn't seem to think about it. I thought about it for a while and said seriously, fortunately, he is only 4 years old, and it is not too late to cultivate the relationship between father and son from now on, and you still have a lot of time to grow up with him. It's better than that." I watched him blink. "Tonight you father and son sleep together. Have a good talk, okay?" That night, just as the father and son were talking, I eavesdropped on the door. "Is there anything I'm doing wrong? Or, what do you think of me? You can say it." "No, my father is tall and handsome, and he is very good at making money to buy a lot of beautiful clothes and bags for my mother, and I want to be like my father in the future." "Thank you, but I still want you to tell me what you really think." "Okay, Dad, can you smile more in the future? Don't always be cold. Spend more time with me and my mother. Don't stay so late in the study at night, and don't give me carrots next time. I don't like to eat at all." "Okay, I promise you, Dad. You're so good. You're the best dad in the world." I smiled slowly with a relieved smile. What a picture of father's love and filial piety. "That's right, Dad. What? I wanted to ask you when I was taking a shower yesterday. How is your body different from mine? You are big here. Why is mine small?" "It's normal. You won't have to show me in the future. Put your pants on." "But, shut up and sleep." Outside the door, I said. The next day, Kindergarten. Elma looked at me and the other parent, trying to lighten the mood. That, I also understand the matter. In fact, it's just a small fight between children. What is there to talk about? Everyone is friendly. It's a pity that the other party's parents didn't listen to it at all, and scolded me. Our family Henry has been crying since he went back, saying that he didn't dare to go to kindergarten, and it was all your son's fault. It's not a good thing for me to look like a fox like yours. And sure enough, someone taught a son, so vicious at such a young age. But if you and your son kneel down today to apologize to our mother, and compensate our family for mental damages, I can consider forgiving you. I listened with my anger and was about to output, why don't you ask your son first? Her phone rang suddenly. Before answering the phone, she glanced at me viciously, and warned in a tone, the child's father called me. If you dare to disagree, my man will not let you go. After speaking, she raised a smile. Hey, husband, I have already told that girl. However, the next second, let me stop making trouble. Why, that's our son. I won't take it lightly. I didn't know what he said on the other end of the phone, and her arrogant smile froze on her face. What? Which Genevieve Craigie? How could our family mess with him? The phone hangs up. When everyone didn't react, she slapped her precious son mercilessly, scolding angrily. Let you talk too much. Makes you mouth more. I don't apologize yet. Her son immediately burst into tears. I don't want to apologize to him. Mom, you said yes. But she didn't seem to care, and several slaps landed on her son's face one after another. Shut up, useless things. You know all day long that you are in trouble. Apologize quickly. Her son finally covered his red and swollen face and apologized tremblingly. After some operation, she looked at me and gave me a flattering smile. I'm sorry. I misunderstood what happened yesterday. It's all my son's fault. Please give our family another chance for the sake of our sincere apology. The attitude can be said to be the same as just now. There was already a guess in my mind. I lowered my voice and asked Genevieve Craigie on the side, what's going on? Genevieve Craigie, who had been cold-faced, softened slightly, and he said succinctly, I asked Lillian Nicholas to leave work last night. I understood it instantly. It's really Genevieve Craigie's style. Although she was a little blindsided by the sudden change in the other parents' Elma was clearly happy with the result. That, since that's the case, everyone said it, this matter is over. There is no problem. The two parents can go back first. For Elma's sake, I was going to leave this to light, but I still think it's not good. Genevieve Craigie seemed to see what was in my mind. What, haven't you ever scolded? You know me. I immediately called out to the woman who turned around and was about to slip away. Wait, I haven't finished speaking. In her increasingly ugly face, I crackled and continued to output. To be honest, I'm really weird, crying when I say a few words. Your son is so fragile. Why are you so thick-skinned? It's not good to be a mother, but you're good at being an animal. Ouch. What else is your man won't let me go? Why do you have a husband? 10 minutes later, I exhaled. It's cool. Genevieve Craigie nodded in agreement and whispered in a voice that only he and I could hear. Madam, so eloquent. That night, the father and son reported the situation of the day as usual. Genevieve Craigie put it succinctly. Everything works. Then he took out a stack of love letters from his small schoolbag and said indifferently, your classmate gave it to you. The son blinked and said strangely, but Dad, I didn't receive that much before. As soon as I heard it, I knew what was going on, and I smiled. TSK. It seems that Genevieve Craigie's children are very popular in kindergarten. Genevieve Craigie, apparently not wanting to continue the conversation, he asked his son instead, are you bored at the company today? The son shook his head, as if recalling what he had done in the company today, and his eyes lit up. It's not boring at all. I fed the small fish in my uncle's fish tank today, watered the flowers planted by another uncle, and touched the birds raised by the doorman's grandfather. Genevieve Craigie's eyebrows jumped, as if he had a sense of foreboding. Wait, Daddy has something to ask Lillian Nicholas. 5 minutes later, Genevieve Craigie hung up in silence to call Lillian Nicholas. Genevieve Craigie wanted to say something about his son's innocent eyes several times, but finally sighed and resigned himself to his fate. Forget it. It's good if you're happy. It's not early. Let's go rest. I didn't choose to ask, but silently opened a small talk group. That's the group of friends and relatives at Genevieve Craigie, which I had infiltrated with the trouble of pretending to be an employee. It was in this group that I learned about all the gossip in Genevieve Craigie's company, from his sweet past with Ina Jimmy, to the love-hate relationship between the janitor and the cleaning aunt, including the fact that Ina Jimmy went to the company yesterday and finally left the scene. It has been discussed all over the place, and today, the group is even more lively. The main character of the topic is naturally Genevieve Craigie. Family. Does anyone know what's going on? And why Jaden is crying wolf in his office? I will answer this question. Do you remember the precious fish that Jaden brought back from abroad? Genevieve Craigie didn't know how to feed him the fish today, and the fish died of feeding him. Victim again. Genevieve Craigie ran to water Jackson's cactus, and the person is now crying loudly as he holds the body. I seriously suspect that Genevieve Craigie is in a bad mood. Today he passed by my workstation, and then stared at the McDonald's small toy on my desk with a blank face for a minute. I just said to send him, and the point came. He said thank you expressionlessly, and walked away so smartly. No doubt about it. I just ran into Genevieve Craigie while fishing in the toilet. I took off my pants and pretended to pee, but he praised my panties with a blank face, and I relied on who understood my helplessness at the time. The latest news. Genevieve Craigie went to scourge the fat chicken, raised by the doorman with a blank face. Oh no parrot. Followed by a decrepit Lillian Nicholas. Report progress. Genevieve Craigie has chicken feathers on his head. Oh no, bird feathers come out expressionlessly. Alarm. The family on the 8th floor was on full alert, and Genevieve Craigie and Lillian Nicholas attacked and entered. After reading the chat log, I was silent for a long time. If you want to say that this stinky boy can't act, he also knows that pretending to be Genevieve Craigie's usual cold appearance. If you want to say that he can act, none of the things he does are something that Genevieve Craigie can do. After all, it's just a 4-year-old child. How steady can you expect him to be? However, looking at the appearance in the group, these actions did not seem to arouse their doubts, and even made excuses for this. She loves him, and he loves her. It's a pity that things are wrong. He already has a family, so he can only bury his surging feelings in the bottom of his heart, ruthlessly push her away from his side, and finally vent it in this way. Me. What a beautiful mental state. Such a touching sadomasochistic story. If I didn't know the truth, I would have believed it. The next day, the children will be picked up from school as usual. When he arrived at the kindergarten, he found a woman talking to him. Auntie will take you out for a while. Okay. Oh yes. You don't know who I am. I grew up with your father, and unlike your mother, who got married only by marriage, I am the one he really likes. Now that I'm back, I'm sure it won't be long before your dad will divorce her and be with me. Obviously, it was the other protagonist at the center of the topic, Ina Jimmy. She curled her lips and smiled, her tone seductive. But don't be sad. Your mother's kind of woman who marries for the benefit of the family doesn't know what love is. She doesn't love you at all, and just treats you as an heir. I guess she usually doesn't let this eat or play. It's strict and boring. I'm different. If you're my child, I'll satisfy you for whatever you want. Salome Craigie. Will you change me to be your mother in the future? Genevieve Craigie listened with a frown, then looked at Ina Jimmy with a foolish look, seemed to want to argue with her, but seemed to feel unnecessary, and finally said with a cold face, don't be presumptuous. Besides, you die. They love each other very much. Me, hey. Catching a glimpse of me in the afterglow, he immediately swept past her and walked towards me. Why did you come? I explained. There was a bit of a traffic jam on the road. Ina Jimmy's gaze shifted to me, as if to confirm my identity, and she got straight to the point. Moira Esther, let's talk. Strictly speaking, this was my first meeting with Ina Jimmy. I learned about her by accident after my marriage to Genevieve Craigie. Before this, I also guessed that her image might be gentle and demure, or bright and playful, and she could become her first love. And she was also an excellent and attractive person, at least not to say those things to a child like just now. Bad reviews. Whoever says bad things about others behind my back will be caught and spanked by me. Just then, Elma, who was not far away, saw me coming up to meet me. Salome Craigie. Mom, you're here. This lady is going to pick up Salome Craigie to play. She said Genevieve Craigie meant, I'm not going to call you to confirm. I feigned panic. What? I didn't know there was such a thing. Elma looked at Ina Jimmy with an alarmed look. Who are you? What are you doing in our kindergarten? Guards. There are suspicious people here. With Elma in sight, I mouthed into her and said, let's talk to the police, uncle. Soon, Ina Jimmy was quickly taken away by the security guard, who rushed to hear the noise. Let go of me. I'm not a human trafficker child. Although it's not mine now. Maybe in the future. I just said don't touch me. I can walk on my own. Completely disappearing from view, she turned back to me and yelled, you wait. You won't be proud for long. I'll let you know who he loves the most. On that day, the kindergarten left an assignment. Ask the children to wash their father's feet. In the living room, Genevieve Craigie closed her eyes as if she were dead. Let's get started. 2 minutes later, he pressed his son's feet into the basin with a blank face, and read his lines without emotion. Dear father, you have worked hard. I held my phone in my hand, and shot the video as requested, and I was about to collapse with my laughter. Seeing that it was about to end, his son suddenly laughed while dodging. Aha, itchy ha ha ha. Dad, I'm sorry. I really can't help it ha ha ha. Genevieve Craigie was silent for a long time and exhaled deeply. Then he once again pronounced the line with a blank face, that made people scratch the ground. In this way, after many in a row, the task was finally barely completed. At night, I lay in bed and watched the video repeatedly, laughing and slumping the bed loudly. Genevieve Craigie on the side started coldly. Moira Esther, Ina Jimmy, don't you have anything you want to ask me? I was still smiling evilly, and I didn't react for a moment. What? He sighed to himself. Actually, I've been waiting for you to ask me about Ina Jimmy, but whether it was your first reaction after she returned to China, to push me away, or the unclear words she said in kindergarten today, you didn't seem to care from beginning to end. I met the complicated emotions in his eyes, and I didn't know what to say for a while. A helpless sigh rang in my ears. It's okay, then I'll take the initiative to explain it to you. He locked my gaze tightly, and his tone was serious. My relationship with Ina Jimmy has never been what you thought it would be. She is the granddaughter of my grandfather's best friend. Her grandfather saved the old man's life when he was young, which is considered to be a favor to the Craigie family. Plus her parents died early, and she has lived with her grandfather since she was a child, and our family, including me, has always taken good care of her. If I have to say that I have feelings for her, I just treat her as a sister. 5 years ago, Ina Jimmy's grandfather was seriously ill and bedridden, and asked us to take good care of her, and since then, under the pretext of letting her grandfather feel at ease to leave, she began to lie about my relationship with her, and for her grandfather's sake, I chose to turn a blind eye. Later, Grandpa Ina Jimmy still knew the truth, and after making it clear that I only regarded her as a sister, and that she had caused me a lot of trouble by claiming to be a girlfriend, he offered to send Ina Jimmy abroad to cut off her mind before he died. Moira Esther, if I really like someone, I can't just because she's out of the country, and not see her once in 5 years. So now you understand. There's only one person I like from the beginning to the end. I met his obscure eyes, a little confused. That, he, yes, that's the case. Okay, I know. No, in fact, I want to say that you say these feelings in your son's face, and it's very dramatic. Oh, he, Genevieve Craigie, as if completely out of order, he lowered his eyes and sighed lowly. You, why are you always so heartless? A strange phone call came. The woman you love the most is in my hands. Genevieve Craigie gave me one look, then hung up with a blank face. I wondered, who hit it? How did it hang up? Genevieve Craigie said indifferently. Scam call. Soon, another unfamiliar number called. The phone answered, but this time it was Ina Jimmy's crying voice. I beg you, please don't hit me, Genevieve Craigie. He loves me so much. He'll give you money. Ina Jimmy's voice stopped abruptly, followed by a rugged male voice. Genevieve Craigie, the woman you love the most is in my hands. Prepare 20 million at 8 o'clock tonight. Go to the abandoned warehouse at Hangyang Road to redeem her. Don't call the police. otherwise her life will not be guaranteed. The phone hangs up. Genevieve Craigie and I stared at each other. I was the first to speak. Why is the price of kidnapping so conservative these days? If nothing else, 20 million is just a bag of money, which is nothing compared to a human life. 20 million, appointed to be saved. Genevieve Craigie. He sighed silently. Have you forgotten that you are the lady? Moira Esther. If you hesitate for a few seconds, I won't be so uncomfortable. I looked into Genevieve Craigie's slightly resentful dark eyes, and it seemed to say, you're overdoing it. I was stared at by him, and I panicked to make amends. I know I'm your wife. Isn't it important to save people? Genevieve Craigie didn't dwell on it anymore. He looked at the time and said in a deep voice, we have 2 more hours to prepare. You go and call Salome Craigie. Due to the other party's request, that only Genevieve Craigie be allowed to attend the appointment. In the end, the son who was carrying Genevieve Craigie's body could only go alone. At the same time, we also installed imperceptible mobile cameras on our son, while Genevieve Craigie and I monitored the situation outside the warehouse in case the unexpected happened. Watching my son walk in, I always felt a little uneasy in my heart. As the surveillance shows, Ina, Jimmy and the 2 kidnappers appear in the frame. The son said according to the explanation, the money is here. People can let it go. Soon, Ina Jimmy was unchained and happily threw herself into her son's arms. I knew you were going to come to my rescue. The viewing angle is limited, and I can't see the expression on my son's face, but I can only hear the disgust in his voice. Bad. He paused, and the word aunt was stopped by him in time. Don't touch me. It's rude. Me. Not quite right. Genevieve Craigie frowned slightly. Look at Ina Jimmy. Her face is ruddy and her movements are agile. She doesn't look like she has been abused. As soon as he finished speaking, a muffled sound came, followed by the sound of heavy objects hitting the ground. The perspective of the picture turns to a dilapidated ceiling. Ina Jimmy's panicked voice sounded. What are you doing? Who are you going to show me when you knocked him out for a while? Yes, he's bleeding from his forehead. Quick, save someone. The kidnapper laughed. It turns out that you can really cheat so much money. In this case, why should Lao Tzu be rare with your hundreds of thousands? It is better to do a big ticket. You, shameless. Ina Jimmy's voice stopped abruptly. I also pretended to block the knife for him. Lao Tzu didn't have time to play the game of saving heroes with you. Fatty, don't come here to help me tie these 2 up. Another voice trembled and said, Great, big brother. This man is the ruler of the Craigie family. We won't have a good time when it comes to him. I'm afraid that we have no place to spend it. Cowardly fools, come over here and help, or you'll have good fruit to eat. Something happened to my son. Genevieve Craigie stopped me and was about to move. Don't be impulsive. I'm too vulnerable to be a child and a woman with you. But it seems that it was a temporary idea just now, and they will not be very vigilant. I have already called the police when I came, and it is estimated that it will be a while. Before he could finish speaking, he closed his eyes and fainted. I also thought that he was angry because of his son's affairs, and when he thought that the father and son were injured and the other fainted, he was even more angry. I didn't have time to wait for the police to come, so I grabbed a rusty iron rod near the warehouse and broke down the door. The 2 kidnappers were tying up Ina Jimmy and her son, and they seemed a little confused when they saw me breaking in with a murderous face. Who are you? Seeing that they had ropes in their hands and no weapons, before they could react, I rushed straight over, picked up the iron rod, and hit the skinny one among them. I'm your uncle. Let you touch my son, I'll kill you. Death to the old lady. Dead. Because I didn't have a weapon in my hand, I killed the red eye again, and the other party quickly fainted without being able to resist. I turned my gaze back to the stocky man next to me. He cowered in the corner and said, I was forced by my eldest brother. Beat him. You are not allowed to beat me. I walked up to him with an iron rod in my hand. You can't hide from any of them. There was another muffled sound, and the warehouse fell completely silent. Just then, the police finally broke in with their men. I was stunned when I saw the corpses that fell to the ground. I didn't have time to explain too much, so I quickly said, Quick, call an ambulance. In the hospital, the atmosphere was somewhat silent. Lillian Nicholas pursed her lips. rarely choking on me. Don't worry, Genevieve Craigie, they'll be fine. After examination at the hospital, the kidnappers caused a moderate concussion to the son's stick, and he has not been able to wake up until now. I lowered my eyes and said, but Genevieve Craigie, he is obviously not injured. Why has he been unconscious? Even if the doctor examines it, it will not find any problems. And a whole day has passed since the day it happened. Lillian Nicholas was also silent. After a while, he uttered aloud, do you know why I didn't like you before? Because you're so cold compared to Genevieve Craigie. On your wedding anniversary every year, he didn't hesitate to work overtime in the company until the early hours of the morning in order to be able to spend the whole time with you. But you didn't even forget when the anniversary was, and even his birthday. You need someone to remind you. There's more to it than that. I've been with Genevieve Craigie for so many years, and I naturally feel that he deserves better, not to mention his appearance, family background, at least as much as he puts into his feelings. He paused and said no more. It wasn't until I was handed a piece of paper in front of me that I realized that I had cried at some point. Now it seems like you care a little more about Genevieve Craigie than I thought. Don't worry, he'll be fine, and I hope you'll be doubly nice to him when he wakes up. Just as he finished saying this, a faint voice sounded on the hospital bed. Mom, it was the son who woke up. I immediately rushed over and hugged him. Awake. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Wait a minute. After realizing it, I looked at his immature little face and said in surprise, son, you and your father have been replaced. At that moment, the hospital bed next to him also sounded. Genevieve Craigie stood up, hung her head and rubbed her forehead. How long have I been unconscious? I hurriedly replied. One day, you woke up. You didn't know that I almost thought you were going to die. He lowered his eyes to my red and swollen circles. Crying, he curled his lips and smiled. I have no conscience for so many years, but I feel sorry for me once. Life is finally back on track. With his son back in kindergarten, Genevieve Craigie continues his cold noodle president. The son's face was full of happiness. Mom is so tired of being a father, but I still prefer to play with other children. Genevieve Craigie rubbed his eyebrows and didn't speak. I know why he has a headache. After a few days of recuperation in the hospital, returning to the company not only has to deal with the backlog of work, but also to deal with the mess that the stinky boy caused before. By the way, Dad, who wins the identity swap game we play? Genevieve Craigie lowered her eyes and rubbed her son's head. You did a great job. You win. The son's eyes blinked. Can I have a reward? What reward do you want? The son thought about it seriously. Dad is busy with work, and every time I went to the amusement park before, my mother accompanied me, so this time I want my parents to accompany me. The corners of Genevieve Craigie's lips curled. Okay, I promise you. Oh yes. And Ina Jimmy, after the kidnapping was revealed, Craigie's family was completely chilled by her. In the end, she was given a sum of money and forcibly sent out of the country, and the kindness of Jimmy's family was written off after that. If nothing else, she will not be able to return to China in this life. After dealing with the mountain of work, Genevieve Craigie finally found time to accompany his son to the amusement park. In the amusement park, Genevieve Craigie relentlessly followed my son's butts, and me as an emotionless camera machine. Soon, night fell. My son and I had a disagreement over whether to ride the merry-go-round or the Ferris wheel first. Genevieve Craigie sighed wearily. Why are you two so energetic? I smiled. It's because you're too old to be useful. Genevieve Craigie paused, then gave me a leisurely glance. Feeling a danger to my gut, I quickly changed the subject. Well, vote to decide, and the minority obeys the majority. In the end, due to my obscenity, the two of them could only follow me to ride the Ferris wheel. The Ferris wheel slowly rose, and the inky sky not far away began to explode at some point. Genevieve Craigie said suddenly, Salome Craigie, turn around and cover your ears. I watched my resentful son turn around and wink. What do you want to do? He curled his lips and smiled. Madam, you are really too slow sometimes, and many times you make me helpless. When the Ferris wheel rose to its highest point, he lowered his head and gently dropped a kiss. I opened my eyes wide and watched his usually cold face look unusually gentle in the light of the fireworks. But what to do? It's really planted on you, in this life. The end.